Hey, welcome back to week 3 of our Be Nice series. And this weekend we were talking about being kind in conflict. Conflict is unfortunately something that we all are going to face. And when we face conflict, we have choices of how we're going to deal with that conflict. We can choose to just accept the way that things are. We can choose to adapt our circumstances in order to manage and handle that conflict. Or we can choose to ask for change when it comes to conflict. And today we're going to be doing some practical teaching on how to hold those conversations with kindness and how to hold those types of conversations where you're asking for change well. And as we have a conversation like that, the very first thing that we always need to keep in mind that the reason why we ask for change is because we desire peace and restoration in our relationships. That should always be our goal. In Romans chapter 12, verse 18, it says, do all that you can to live at peace with everyone. It doesn't mean that we're always going to have peace in our relationships, but as far as it depends on us, we're going to lean in and have the hard conversations, and hopefully in a kind way that helps bring peace and restoration to our relationships. So getting into some very practical steps of how do we hold that kind of conversation well. Maybe you've decided, hey, I'm going to have this conversation and confront the conflict that I'm dealing with. And you go to have that conversation and you're like, well, that didn't end well. These steps will hopefully allow those conversations maybe to go a little bit better, at least a little bit better as far as it depends on you and the peace and restoration that you can bring into your relationships. So there's several steps to this to kind of consider. The very first one is to pray first. Pray for peace. God is our peace and he can help us. There's a couple different reasons why we go to God in prayer before we just enter into these conversations. The very first reason is we want there to be peace in us as we enter into that conversation. Sometimes it's that ability to check with God, to check our hearts, to make sure that the reason why we want to have this conversation is pure and is to bring peace, is to bring restoration, not to tell someone off or help them to realize everything that they've done wrong. It's to bring about peace. And so we need to make sure our heart is right. We also pray for the peace that goes before us, that God would already be at work in that other person's heart that's going to be maybe receiving this ask for change conversation that we're going to be bringing to them. So we always pray first. That's the very first step. The next step that we want to consider is to make it safe. Maybe you've been in a conversation before where it happened at the wrong time, the wrong location, and it just didn't go well. Making it safe allows us to say, okay, what's the right location for this conversation? It's probably not publicly. We don't want to make sure that location isn't like a public place with people around where they're going to feel embarrassed or feel like they can't actually express or process their own feelings as we talk about this. So the location matters. The right time. Again, we want to make sure that we are approaching these kind of conversations at the right time. So, having a conversation when you know someone is incredibly busy and trying to get a whole bunch of things done, maybe it's better to wait just a minute and come back around and have that conversation at a better time. And then another one is the right tone. I know as a parent, this one is huge for me. I have to make sure that my tone is one that is about peace and restoration and not about my own frustration. My tone matters. If my kid doesn't feel safe in having the conversation with me, they're going to shut down or get angry back and the conflict just continues to ensue. So we want to make it safe. We want to have the right location, right time, and the right tone as we enter into these conversations. So after we've prayed and we make sure that we're making it safe, the third step is to what I call practice FBI. This actually comes from a training called Our Community Listens. It's been so helpful for me in my own conversations. It's how to frame the conversation where it doesn't automatically put up defenses to where the conversation doesn't even move forward. The very first thing is the feeling. Name the feeling that you're feeling. Hey, I'm feeling concerned. I'm feeling stressed out. I'm feeling uncertain, whatever that might be in relation to the conflict that you're facing. B is to name the behaviors that you're seeing. You know, when you come home at a different time than your curfew time, when you don't do your homework, when you don't turn your projects in on time for our group project at work, whatever those behaviors might be. And you want to be very specific and factual about those. So you first address the feeling, I'm feeling concerned when we don't turn our project in on time. And then the I is the impact. What is the behavior? What impact is the behavior having in the situation? And the impact is we might not be able to move forward on this project and we're going to lose out on bonus money. Whatever the situation might be, name the feeling, the behavior, and then the impact of that. So we don't just drop this FBI conversation and mic drop, we're out and see you later. The next step is so important, and that's the step to listen. We invite them into the conversation by asking a question. Can you tell me a little bit more about what's going on? Why is this project being turned in late? Why are you coming home past your curfew? Whatever the situation might be, we invite them into the conversation and we listen. And that can be challenging to do, but we listen for a lot of reasons. First, we listen to learn. Is there something else going on that we don't know? And that can keep us from jumping to assumptions and conclusions that are continuing to cycle the conflict over and over. James 1:19 says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, just you must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. So we listen so that way we can learn. We also listen so we can forgive and so we can be forgiven. So we can understand, hey, that's okay that you didn't turn it in, the project in on time this time, but let's work together to make sure that that can happen again for the next time. Or I didn't give clear instructions and that left you feeling stuck and afraid to talk to me about that. I am so sorry for that, and I'll make sure that we meet together on the front end to have a good conversation. And then Colossians 3:13 says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must also forgive others. As we listen, we have to remain humble, allowing for people to disappoint us, allowing for each other's faults, knowing that, hey, there might be something that we're responsible for too. So we listen to learn, we listen to forgive and be forgiven. We also listen to restore. Galatians chapter 6, verses 1-5 really talk about our attitude as we have a restorative conversation where we're asking for change. It says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. So each one should carry their own load. We listen to restore, and then also we then need to step into that final step of making a clean agreement. What are the things that you're going to do? What are the things that I'm going to do? This is how we're going to move forward through this conflict together. So making a clean agreement, again, means making agreement about what I will do, making an agreement about what you will do moving forward. Matthew 5, verse 37 says, just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. We want to make clean agreements and then hold one another accountable, because that helps us to not cycle through the conflict over and over. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation where you felt like, oh man, we finally got to the bottom of the problem, put everything out on the table, and it was just such a good conversation. But if we don't actually move towards making a clean agreement, that conflict is probably going to rise up again. Again, it's coming to that place around where we hold one another accountable, so that way we can have a restorative relationship, that we can live at peace with everyone. Now, not every conflict can be resolved by asking for change. Sometimes just accepting the circumstances is the way to go. Sometimes adjusting our lives around the circumstances is the way to go. But when it's time to ask for change, we can hold those conversations with a lot of kindness. Again, as we pray for peace, as we work to make it safe, as we strive to have FBI conversations, as we remember to listen, and as we make clean agreements with one another. I hope this practical advice has been super helpful to you. I would advise you, if you are dealing with a conflict, start with the small ones first as you practice these things out. Don't go after the big one. Get some practice underneath your belt of when conflict arises, okay, I have some tools to be able to deal with it and to ask for change and move forward so that I can live with peace and restoration towards everyone. Have a great week and be kind.